The next talk will be Michael Sieper and from Personio and Ashley Ward from Palo Alto Networks, who will talk about HR software with cloud-native security. I will leave the stage to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Of all the talks you could come and see, we're certainly very pleased to have you along. My name's Ashley. I fortunately will just be doing the least amount of talking. I'll be trying to just ask Michael all the questions. He's the one that we want to hear from. So Michael is Senior Security Engineer with Personio. Michael, would you mind telling us a little bit about Personio?
Yeah, well, Personio is a startup from Germany. We try to be the leading HR software for small and medium enterprises. So kind of one-stop solution for human resource management and also to automate processes, have seamless integration and insights to the data that HR is mostly handling.
That's excellent. Now, I do, of course, have some sneaky insights into what you might be talking about. And of course, when we hear about these kind of these conferences and culture and cloud native, it can all get a little bit confusing. So we're talking in the cloud native track. What does cloud native mean to you, and what kind of technologies are you using at Personio?
Yeah, well, of course, cloud native is the most prominent trend in software and technology these days. Yeah. So, of course, we're using cloud native technologies to get our work done. So, well, infrastructure as services. So this is something everyone is familiar of. And for a software as a service company like us, we have to also think about the right way of scaling.
So as a software as a service company, I think that's really important. As I'm familiar with software as a service companies from the work that I've done, it can certainly bring its own challenges, which I think I'm going to drill into in a moment or two. But from a selection of technology choices, sometimes we hear people select technologies for their CV. Contractors might come in to pick something that's cool, but what's the reasoning? Is there, you need to be able to operate at pace, or what's the reasons for going down what can be a complicated stack?
Yeah, of course, all the services we provide to storing data and to handling attributes for human resources require us to leverage all the services in the cloud. So we're running on Amazon Web Services. So we're using AWS EC2 and managed databases, and also EKS Kubernetes distribution to run our application, and having that orchestrated in a way that is both secure and does the right thing. That's the main challenge, of course.
Okay, so there's a couple of things there that I think we'll look at around data and customers' data. Before going that far, I did do a little bit of research. I tried to look professional in asking you questions. I read that you've received some Series D funding. Congratulations on that. And you've quite an impressive customer base. How many offices have you got now?
Yeah, it's already 4 offices around Europe. So we started in Munich, expanded to Madrid in 2019 with an acquisition of a Spanish startup for payroll operations, and then we expanded to Dublin and London as well.
That's right. So not only have you got the large customer base across Europe dealing with some quite complicated necessarily data that you need to worry about, customer data there. You've also got offices all over the region. So that must make regulatory compliance quite a headache.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, there are some guidance given from regulators, from federal governments, how to do software services right. And of course, we have the European General Data Protection Regulations, which tells us how we have to handle personal data. And of course, human resource data is personal data most of the time. And to do this right, we have to deal with certain functionality within our software to restrict access to certain data, to keep it for a certain amount of time, or to get rid of it when it's not needed anymore. So this is all already defined in GDPR, and this is the most strict requirements we have for personal data, I think, in the world. So even the US hasn't got this straight and restrictive access to personal data.
Yeah, I know that there's been some movements there, hasn't there? California's made some efforts in that way, but yeah, I totally understand. And it's actually something that in the UK is still going ahead with, of course, and it's really interesting to see all of that. What about you, Michael? What's your background, and have you been with Personio long?
No, I started a year ago with Personio, about 2 weeks before the pandemic got quite worse and we all went to lockdown. So I haven't spent much time in the offices, unfortunately. So, but I have a long background in software development, working for 30 years and different roles in research and development on big companies like industrialization and telecommunications. And the last years before I started with Personio, the last 10 years I spent in product security and also creating software for network-based intrusion detection. So this is also something that security has in the product as required also for software as a service handling personal data.
And so were you doing product development and then went into security as an SME piece, or was it a decision? No, I'm going to go into security.
Yeah, no, I was more of pushed into it, of course, as most of you want to probably not. There are some people starting with security right away, which is a good thing because it's the most crucial requirement that these days for all the services that are provided. And but I moved into security, from the product perspective, because it had to implement security features. It has to operate them in a secure way, have to be updated regularly because of the broad usage of third-party software, especially open source software. And that brought me to product security and also handling security in the product itself by implementing security features.
I often feel that it was, coming from an operations background myself, it was kind of, we needed to move to a kind of DevOps way of working because sadly people like me were too slow in providing things for developers to do anything of benefit, to bring that business value in. And I always feel like that's, as somebody in operations, wrapped up in non-functional requirements and that being the main thing. It also felt like security was a non-functional requirement that somebody else did. And I think it's really healthy seeing someone like yourself coming in as, no, this is, it's essentially part of it. And that does lead me on to the culture part. So I like playing with the technologies. Obviously, we're working with Prisma Cloud and Palo Alto Networks. I get to use some of the fun stuff. But actually, the culture can be one of the biggest things. Security teams are traditionally seen as blockers. How do you go about, you'd already mentioned infrastructure as code. You've already mentioned, the full AWS stack that you're making use of. So how do you go about bringing security into that?
Yeah, of course, everyone at Personio is aware of that sensitive nature of our data that we're handling on behalf of our customers. So at least that part of the story is already covered. So everyone knows that security is our main asset, which we want to also develop and also have secured. So of course we have to do regular trainings and also put that in our onboarding, and have to deal with certain processes that we have to create and also are creating as the company grows. So, for instance, having proper vulnerability management, looking for outdated vulnerable components, having them updated in time, similar to Casper's talk we have heard, having the right tooling available to help the developers to decide what to update and when. So this is one part of the thing, and of course also guiding the product features in a way that they are implemented in a secure way. So taking security seriously. For that purpose, we have implemented an internal RFC process where security is always part of the story and has to be considered, and we are invited for reviews and give guidance on secure solutions of a certain problem.
That's really good to hear, because it is, when I speak to different organizations, and it's sometimes a question of, well, how do you get that change in place? You know, how do you bring security teams? So one, asking security teams to be involved that early on can be off-putting for the security teams, as well as off-putting for those development teams. I mean, given that Personio, and this ties in with your background, Personio was founded in 2015. The founding team has its origins at the Center for Digital Technology and Management in Munich. Now, that does sound like you've not needed to go through any cultural revolution there. Do you think you have? Or also, how do you think you would, if you haven't, how would you have done it in your other places? Yeah, well,
of course, Personio has a strong culture setup and core purpose. So you always want to find a pragmatic solution for a given problem. So yeah, technology is one part of it, but of course it's the people doing it. So part of our product, of course, our product helps people managing their work. And also technology has to be part and has to be accessible by the people. And yeah, well, of course, also the product has gone through cultural changes depending on what kind of technologies to use and how to evolve them, and growing them with the success of the company and with the number of developers joining the company. But I think we have found a way of dealing with that by creating specific processes like the RFC process I mentioned, and also having initiatives for fostering security, like a security day or a hackathon or something like that, which is able to bring this information to a broader range of people.
That's really interesting, and that's something that is, I think it's really important to call out, is that, you know, trying to organize those days, getting people involved, and embedding it in as this is actually, you know, a major part of our organization. Obviously, with the industry you're in and the product you have, it's core to your very being. And I think that many people would say, you know, a similar thing about their product, but perhaps not build it in as well as that. So that's really interesting. Now, from a technology point of view, and actually I think this ties in. You'd already mentioned that there was an acquisition, so you've got that expansion that you've been doing. You've grown really rapidly, actually, and I would say to anyone to go onto your website, because you can see there's a timeline, and it's really interesting just how much has happened all there. So if you're from a cloud native technology, you mentioned the AWS stack. You've already said that you're using lots of different things there. Now, where would you say there's a direction, do you think, or is there a you know, one size fits all for the right stack to be using? What are your thoughts on this? And maybe you don't want to represent Personio here, but what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think there's no size fits all. I think it's to handle fast growth and to scale in a sustainable way. There we do not want to waste any valuable investment on cloud resources. They're expensive, so we have to constantly monitor and create performance indicators and have to develop them along with the business and the use cases. So fortunately, these days, there are lots of major platforms and frameworks available we can use, so we do not have to invent the wheel. Open source community is great, and we try also to contribute back to the community. So, for instance, coming back to the sustainable automatic scaling and usage of cloud resources built into the product, and also infrastructure taken care of in an automatic way. You can find out more on this, for instance, from our blog posts. We regular post. So on Medium, you find Inside Personio, where my colleague Johannes Brück tells about how we're using Spot instance on AWS for sustainable usage and efficient usage of cost-effective usage of cloud resources. So all this has to play together. So cloud native stack is not only just Kubernetes and the technologies used, but it's more of that. So it's a lot of, even though there are no servers, but you have to take care of the resources because they cost money. And certain functionality also requires to at least make them easily accessible for developers, like monitoring and alerting, and also dashboards for every service. And we have seen, of course, we leveraging labeling our services with teams and more information to keep track on costs of resources and whom to alert when something goes wrong. But also we created something like an easy way for developers to create their monitoring solution for their microservices. So we created custom resource definitions for Kubernetes and operated that handles creation of dashboards and alerting for these services in an easy way. So we can read on that topic from our colleague Philip, also on Medium in our Inside blog. So we're trying to leverage what's available from the community, from the cloud native technology stack to get our work done. But it requires a lot of knowledge and build up of knowledge, and also being in close contact with the current technology trends.
And you know that it can be quite a scary world for people. I mean, if you look at the number of services that are released by the cloud service providers every year, it's great. They're growing. There's more opportunity. There's also a fair amount of necessity to experiment with these things. You know, is it a good fit for the organization? Is it something that's got legs? Is it going to last, or is it just something that will be too costly? I'm glad when I speak to people now that there's not so much lift and shift. There's more going to cloud for capabilities, because as you say, things can get expensive fast, especially if they're just left running. So, would you have any advice for security teams who are perhaps, I mean, we're at the DEVOPS conference, people are going to be pretty technology savvy and know what they're doing, but there may be some security people there who find themselves going, well, I want to come and work for Personio. I don't know what kind of stacks are going to be like. What do I do? How do I approach cloud native security?
Yeah, well, you definitely have not to learn, you build on your existing experience, of course. Build on experience, and security requirements and controls are a bit different when you're coming from your own data center or virtualized enterprise setup. So some of these things like Kubernetes pods, how handled in a secure manner, there are guidelines and compliance check there possible. But this is a bit different to the traditional setup in a data center. So there's some learning involved, keep track on that. And of course, there's also the shift of responsibility. So kind of shared responsibility model with cloud providers. So some of the topics you have to rely on their cloud provider to do right and provide the right security means. And you of course have to make sure that you get the right information from your cloud provider in case of an emergency or an incident, get the right logs and how to do forensics. This is a bit different, probably in a cloud native world, to keep track of the right distributed traces in a microservice environment. So yeah, there are challenges on that aspect regarding infrastructure, but of course for anything regarding application security, well, the Open Web Application Security Project top 10 still applies. So how to do your web application right in a SaaS environment that's still applicable. And yeah, if you rely and should rely on lots of open source, on third-party software, keeping them updated, and create a process around that, it's a thing that has also to live in the cloud native world. Yeah,
very, very good points. That's really good. I know that's one of the reasons we've got our open source offering through the Bridgeco acquisition that just took place. It's really helped expand out on that, really help build some security. And as you say, it's about trying to give back to the community, get involved, and do those things there. So now to be the hard question or the nasty question for you. You presumably just deal with people in HR who just want to see a spreadsheet every so often, and that's about it. Is that what it's all about?
No, so it's not like a spreadsheet in a browser. So of course that's always possible and has been possible in the past, but making it accessible in a structured way, and also adhering to the regulations, like what information needs or has to be accessible for certain people. So role-based access control to these attributes. This is, of course, the major part of the platform, keeping in track, but also, of course, everything around the employee's life cycle. So from recruiting to onboarding, and having tasks defined that have to be executed, kind of workflow management, built in or extendable, and all the integrations that are possible. So at some point in time, you want to get your pay bill right, and this information has to come from the HR management tool. And so this is something that we're working on, and working with integrations. We have a public API that's available for extension. So this is also a major part. So we are not dealing with HR professionals only, also with developers on their part that want to get more information from their HR data, not only the reports which are available, but getting more information. And of course, we have expanded our marketplace on external integrations, which are possible to other tools in these frames, from communication to calendar integration, whatever. So there are a lot of points where we expand beyond this space of just HR people.
No, that's fine. It's something that Prisma Cloud is SaaS-based or can run on-premise. And of course, you would think, oh, so it's just a security team that looks at it. But of course, it's not. Well, that's why we've got the APIs as well, because it's all about workflow and about allowing organizations to automate as they need to. So yeah, absolutely. It's good to hear that's because that is the modern approach, isn't it? So that's a really healthy thing to be hearing. So you're dealing with this critical data for companies. You're operating at pace. I'm pretty sure I saw that you're growing as well. But are you recruiting at the moment?
Yeah. So currently we are about 670, I think, employees, and this year we want to grow to 1,000 by the end of the year. So there are a lot of positions open. So have a look at the Personio.com website about Personio and careers. You'll find us, and yeah, you can learn a lot about our internal culture over there as well. Well worth a look.
No, that's excellent. And then there's one question that I did warn you that I was going to ask because I saw it. What's all this about chocolate protein puddings?
Yeah, this was not easy to find out, and I think I will keep it secret because if you want to find out, you have to apply for a role in Personio. Especially this sales team has created this, and of course our employer branding team is quite good at that. So unfortunately have not been in the office only 2 weeks last year, so I probably have found out
how
this is.
That's fine. From a Personio.com for anyone wanting to revolutionize their HR. Personio.com, and I think I saw Laurie kindly put the jobs roles in there to have a look at. Certainly lots of interesting ones. And then also anyone from Personio who hears this needs to now send you chocolate protein puddings to you all can be back in the office. No, I'm joking. But listen,
yeah,
I forgot to say at the beginning, if there are any questions, hopefully we'll see if we've got time because we're just wrapping up now. Thanks very much, Michael, for coming on and talking to us about Personio. From a Palo Alto Networks point of view, we are also hiring. We have got a lovely security product in the cloud native space, and we want to help people secure their cloud native environments. So if you want to learn more about how we secure over 80,000 customers or how Prisma Cloud is the industry's only comprehensive cloud native security platform, then head over to paloaltonetworks.com or reach out to me.
Thank you for having me.